You know what's wild? Two people walked across some wet volcanic ash 4 million years ago, and their footprints might just be the oldest evidence of romantic love we've ever found. Now, before you roll your eyes thinking this is another boring history video, hear me out, because this story completely changed how I think about love and relationships. We're talking about creatures that barely looked human, yet they might have felt that same flutter in their chest when they saw their partner that you feel when you see your crush. Scientists have been digging into this mystery for decades, and what they've found is honestly mind-blowing. See, when researchers talk about romantic love, they're not just talking about feelings. They're talking about actual brain chemistry, dopamine that makes you feel high, oxytocin that bonds you to someone, vasopressin that makes you want to protect them, and endorphins that basically make you addicted to being around them. And here's where it gets crazy. These exact same chemicals show up in tons of other animals, even some birds, which means the capacity for love goes way, way back in our family tree. So let's rewind to about 4 million years ago, because that's when things get really interesting for our story. This is when we see Ardipithecus, who lived around 4.4 million years ago, and then the earliest Australopithecus species popping up between 4.2 and 3.8 million years ago. These guys had literally just split off from our common ancestor with chimps, and they were starting to develop all these weird new traits that would eventually lead to us sitting here watching YouTube videos. The world back then? Nothing like today's Africa. We're talking about this constantly changing landscape of forests and woodlands that kept switching between super wet and really dry, forcing these early ancestors to hustle harder and travel farther just to find food. Imagine having to walk miles every day just to find enough fruit or edible plants, while dodging predators and dealing with unpredictable weather patterns that could turn your favorite food spot into a dried-up wasteland. The fossil pollen records from this time show rapid shifts between closed canopy forests and open grasslands, sometimes changing within just a few thousand years. And when life gets that tough, having someone to watch your back while you're digging for roots or grabbing fruit becomes a game changer for survival. Which brings us to this fascinating character called Ardipithecus remedis, or Artie for short, whose skeleton absolutely stunned scientists when they revealed it in 2009. This creature is like a walking contradiction. She's got this ape-like grasping big toe, but her pelvis is built for walking upright like us. But here's the kicker, and this is what really got anthropologists excited. The males barely had any fangs. I mean, look at male chimps or gorillas today, and they've got these massive canine teeth they use to literally fight other males for mating rights. But Ardipithecus males, their canines were just slightly bigger than the females, which is huge, and I mean that figuratively, because it's actually about them being small. This guy, Owen Lovejoy, who's a big deal anthropologist, looked at those tiny canines and said, hold up, this changes everything. Because if males aren't growing massive fighting teeth anymore, maybe they're not fighting over females like their ape cousins. Maybe instead of beating each other up, they're actually sticking around, forming real relationships with females, and helping raise the kids. Basically, he's saying pair bonding, the whole foundation of romantic partnership, was already a thing 4.4 million years ago. Now, obviously, some scientists push back on this, because that's what scientists do, and they made a good point that bonobos have small canine differences, but they're definitely not monogamous. Fair enough. But when researchers started looking at everything together, the pelvic structure, how fast the kids grew up, what they were eating based on tooth wear, it all started painting this consistent picture of Ardipithecus as a creature that moved between fruit patches in a way that makes total sense if males were bringing food back to females and their babies. The isotope analysis of their teeth shows they were eating from multiple food sources across different environments, suggesting they were covering serious ground to gather resources. After Ardipithecus, we get Australopithecus anamensis hanging out between 4.2 and 3.9 million years ago. And while we don't have as many fossils from these guys, what we do have shows they were definitely walking upright all the time. Plus, they keep showing this trend where males and females are becoming more similar in size and tooth shape, and this pattern gets even more obvious in their famous descendant, Australopithecus afarensis, Lucy's species. But okay, here's where the story gets absolutely incredible. In 1978, at this place called Letoli in Tanzania, researchers found these footprints preserved in volcanic ash from 3.66 million years ago. And these aren't some vague impressions. These are clear, obvious footprints from creatures walking on two legs, with foot arches and toe patterns that look way more like human walking than any ape movement. Mary Leakey's team noticed something that made everyone's romantic heart skip a beat. One set of smaller footprints was following so close to a larger set that she said it looked like they might have been holding hands. Then in 2024, scientists came back with all this high-tech scanning equipment and computer models to really analyze these tracks, and what they found was pretty amazing. They compared the spacing and rhythm of these ancient footprints to how modern humans walk together, looking at couples, parents with kids, and just random people walking near each other. They used something called dynamic time warping algorithms to match the stride patterns. Basically, a fancy way of comparing how the timing between steps matches up. The fossil tracks match most closely with how romantic couples walk when they've got their arm around each other's shoulders. Sure, the scientists were careful to say it could have been a mom and kid, but the statistical match with lovers walking together got everyone talking about the world's oldest romantic stroll. And it gets better, because in 2021 they found even more tracks at Letoli showing this individual with a super narrow, cross-stepping gait, unlike anything we see in modern humans. But what really matters is that we've got multiple individuals clearly walking together at the exact same time on the exact same surface, moving in sync like they actually wanted to stay close to each other, which is way different from how most primates just kind of loosely hang out in the same area. To really understand what these footprints mean emotionally, you've got to look at how modern primates behave. When researchers watch baboons, chimps, and bonobos in the wild, they notice something interesting. The only species that consistently walk side by side, maintaining that close spacing while traveling, are the ones that form pair bonds, like titi monkeys and owl monkeys. In species where everyone mates with everyone, individuals spread out as soon as they start looking for food. Field studies have tracked primate groups for thousands of hours, documenting exactly how far apart individuals stay while moving, and the pattern is super clear. So those tight Letoli tracks suggest something more than just hanging out. They suggest real attachment. And here's something that blew my mind when I learned it. Walking upright might have actually triggered the evolution of romantic love. Think about it. Once moms started walking on two legs, they had to carry their babies in their arms, which meant they couldn't move as fast or gather as much food. Unlike chimp babies that can cling to mom's fur from day one, early hominin infants would have been totally helpless. Suddenly, having a male partner who would bring food or keep watch for leopards became a massive survival advantage for her and her baby. This whole provisioning system fits perfectly with evolutionary models showing that when dad's help really boosts baby survival, nature starts favoring couples that stick together. The brain chemistry behind all this is where things get really interesting. And I promise this isn't as boring as it sounds. When you're in love, your brain is basically throwing a chemical party. Oxytocin floods your system during cuddling and sex. Vasopressin makes you want to guard your partner from rivals. And dopamine gives you that addictive high that makes you want to be around them constantly. But here's what's really fascinating. These chemicals don't just make you feel good. They actually rewire your brain. Studies on prairie voles show that after mating, their brains literally change to make them prefer their partner's smell, appearance, even their specific calls. Brain scans of people in love, whether they just met or have been married for decades, show the same regions lighting up: the ventral tegmental area and nucleus accumbens. And here's the wild part. The basic structure of these brain regions evolved way before the split between humans and apes. These love chemicals are super ancient, but evolution can tweak how they work pretty fast. There's this crazy example with voles, where prairie voles mate for life, but their cousins, meadow voles, sleep around, and the only difference is this tiny genetic region that controls vasopressin receptors. Just a small DNA change can completely flip an entire species' mating system. Researchers have actually created genetically modified meadow voles that act like prairie voles just by inserting this one gene variant. Now, we don't have DNA from Ardipithecus or Australopithecus, but finding the same specialized empathy-related brain cells in humans, whales, and elephants tells us the neural hardware for deep attachment existed way before our genus even showed up. The physical evidence keeps supporting this pair bonding idea too. Baby Ardipithecus couldn't cling to mom's fur as well as chimp babies can, which made life way harder for mothers and made dad's help way more valuable. Their hand structure shows they still had some grasping ability, but not nearly as much as modern apes, creating this perfect storm where moms desperately needed support. And those smaller male canines didn't just mean less fighting, they also meant males were less likely to accidentally hurt their mates during grooming or playing around. And over thousands of generations, these little changes would have built more trust between males and females. Looking at Australopithecus afarensis, we see males and females with body size differences that fall right between chimps and modern humans. Computer models of their joints show they could walk and even jog efficiently, which meant partners could actually travel together without one always lagging behind. The biomechanics studies are super detailed here, showing that their energy expenditure while walking was remarkably similar between sexes. And this ability to move as a unit would have made it way easier to forage together and strengthen their bond through constant daily interaction. The timing of childhood development also supports the pair bonding story. Tooth studies suggest Ardipithecus kids were weaned faster than chimps, but slower than earlier apes, creating this sweet spot where dads who stuck around could help raise one kid and then have another one sooner. The microscopic analysis of tooth enamel growth lines shows these kids were probably nursing for about 3 years, compared to 5 years in chimps. Once that cycle got going, evolution would have reinforced all those brain circuits that make being apart feel awful, basically inventing heartache. Now let's be real here. Pair bonding doesn't mean these ancient creatures were all living in some prehistoric version of a Disney movie. Modern hunter-gatherers show us that human mating is super flexible, with serial, monogamy, polygyny, and all sorts of informal arrangements. Yet romantic attachment shows up pretty much everywhere. Anthropological studies of over 200 different cultures found that romantic love exists in all of them, even when marriages are arranged for economic or political reasons. Our ancestors probably had the same variety, with some males playing the field while others settled down with their families. Even though our main evidence is 4 million years old, younger fossils give us glimpses of how these early bonds evolved into emotions we'd recognize today. There's this 100,000-year-old burial site in Israel where bodies were carefully arranged with red ochre and objects, showing that by then, people were expressing symbolic care for their dead loved ones. Yeah, it's way more recent than our footprints, but it shows the evolutionary thread connecting that early attachment chemistry to the love and grief we experience today. Let me paint you a picture of what might have happened at Latali that day. Early morning in East Africa, volcanic ash just settling after a small eruption, still damp and perfect for preserving footprints. The Sadimen volcano had been rumbling for weeks, occasionally spitting out these fine ash layers that would become nature's perfect recording medium. A larger individual, probably a male about 5 feet tall, walks steadily across the ground, occasionally looking around. Right beside him, close enough to touch, a smaller companion matches his rhythm, adjusting her steps to stay in sync. They keep just 8.7 inches between them, the perfect distance for an arm draped over shoulders or hands clasped together. Maybe there's a youngster bouncing along behind them. Each step sinks deep into the ash, and within seconds the surface hardens like concrete, creating this incredible frozen moment of what could be the world's first recorded date. Sure, maybe it was just a mom walking with her teenager, and honestly, we'll never know for certain. The whole pair bond theory doesn't hang on just these footprints. It's built on all this converging evidence from teeth to bones, to brain chemistry, to how modern primates act. If you're waiting for absolute proof of prehistoric sweet talk, well, fossils don't preserve pillow talk, but science works by looking at probabilities, and right now, everything points toward romantic partnerships existing 4 million years ago. Computer models of how mating strategies evolve show something fascinating. Once just a small percentage of males start bringing food to females, the strategy can take over an entire population in just 50,000 years, which is nothing in evolutionary time. The math behind this is actually pretty straightforward. When females who get provisioned can raise more surviving offspring, those offspring inherit dad's tendency to provision, creating a positive feedback loop. These same models predict exactly what we see in early human ancestors: smaller fighting teeth and more face-to-face interaction. At the genetic level, tiny tweaks accumulating over hundreds of thousands of years could have gradually cranked up our ancestors' capacity for that whole dopamine-oxytocin cocktail that makes modern lovers act like complete goofballs. In rodents, just adding one gene variant that affects vasopressin receptors can boost partner preference by 30%. So similar small changes in our lineage could have intensified pair bonding bit by bit. We're talking about mutations in regulatory regions that control when and how much of these bonding hormones get produced. There's even this wild hypothesis from 2025 suggesting that walking on two legs might have helped create language, with the rhythm of footsteps affecting how baby brains developed in the womb, setting them up for the back and forth rhythms of conversation between bonded partners. The idea is that the regular beat of bipedal walking created a kind of prenatal metronome that primed infant brains for rhythmic sound patterns. If that's true, then love and language evolved hand in hand, or should I say, foot in foot. Critics have a point when they warn against seeing too much romance in old rocks. I mean, bonobos do this face-to-face mating thing that looks super intimate, but it's really just social politics, and penguins seem to give pebbles as gifts, but they also steal them right back. That's why researchers stick to stuff they can actually measure, like footprint spacing, bone dimensions, and chemical signatures in teeth. Love doesn't fossilize directly, but the physical signs of living as a couple definitely do. Even the most skeptical experts agree that by 2 million years ago, when Homo erectus showed up with their bigger brains, couples were definitely working together to raise kids. Those bigger brains meant babies had to be born earlier and more helpless, making dad's help absolutely crucial. We're talking about infants that couldn't even hold their heads up for months, totally dependent on adult care. The ancestors of Shakespeare were standing on an emotional foundation, built millions of years before anyone could rhyme. Jump to the Bronze Age and we find these clay tablets with what people call the oldest love poem, the love song for Shu Sin. And these 4,000-year-old verses hit us right in the feels because they're expressing the same emotions we feel today. But those feelings rest on brain circuits, walking patterns, and caregiving behaviors that might trace all the way back to those volcanic footprints. When you really think about it, love 4 million years ago captures this whole amazing cascade of evolutionary changes. Environmental pressures pushed our walking ancestors into tighter partnerships. Mutations fine-tuned their bonding hormones, smaller teeth chilled out male competition, struggling mothers created opportunities for helpful partners, and synchronized footsteps left us this incredible diary entry written in stone. Each change reinforced the others in this endless feedback loop of increasing attachment. There's still so much we don't know about this ancient love story. If someone ever figures out how to extract DNA from 4 million-year-old fossils, we could check for specific love-related gene variants. Better scanning tech might reveal inner ear structures connected to how babies learn to vocalize with their parents. And who knows what footprints are still out there, waiting to be discovered, maybe showing that walking as couples was totally normal back then. Meanwhile, modern brain imaging keeps revealing these universal patterns of love that don't seem to care about culture or time period. People in arranged marriages who grew to love each other show the same brain fireworks as teenagers with their first crush, which really drives home how deep these attachment systems run in our biology. Those Laetoli footprints aren't just some cool ancient artifact. They're like a scientific detective story that connects fossils, hormones, and behavior into one big narrative about how we became the loving species we are today. And while new discoveries might shift the details, the big picture seems pretty clear. Way before our species figured out how to write love songs or buy engagement rings, two upright walking apes felt something strong enough to keep them walking together across a dangerous world. Romance is where biology meets meaning, and those tracks in the ash might be page one of that story. No words survived from that time, no flowers, no promises we could understand, just two sets of footprints going in the same direction. But in those marks, we can almost hear an ancient promise being made. Stay with me, and we'll face whatever comes together. And that promise, once it caught fire in our ancestors' brains, has been burning in every human generation since. What we call the oldest romantic story ever found isn't some fairy tale. It's a 4 million-year research project connecting rocks, bones, brain scans, and that universal human need to find someone who gets us. Those ancient lovers at Latali left no names, no faces, no voices, but their legacy lives on every single time two people sync up their steps and feel that ancient certainty that yes, this is how life should be lived together. From volcanic ash to the love songs on your playlist, we've traveled nearly 4 million years of evolutionary history. And while future discoveries might adjust our timeline, the core truth remains rock solid. Love is older than humanity itself, yet it feels brand new every time it happens. This ancient inheritance pressed first into cooling ash and now into every beating heart that's ever fallen for someone.